Welcome to Ask Dr. Clark. I'm her producer, Tom, and we're doing a series on transgender issues. And funny story, the other day, I inadvertently used a term in one of our videos that was briefly up that is not very welcomed by the trans community. I used the terms transgenderism, which I thought meant the state of being transgender, such as me, would be cisism or something, the state of being cis. Evidently, this term is actually used to demean trans people sometimes. Um, and sometimes it can be difficult to know what's a good term, what's not. I guess my question for you, Dr. Clark, is um, what are some good resources for people to the average person? What are some good resources for them to know these are the appropriate terms, these are not? Someone who doesn't mean harm and wants to use something the right, what are some good ways for them to find what the right terms are out?
Oh, thank you, Tom. It's wonderful that you bring this up. It is so easy for all of us to use inappropriate, incorrect terms because, for one thing, the terminology is changing all the time. I've been doing this for 30 years, working with trans people for 30 years, and the terminology has changed. So words that were fine 10 years ago are no longer so. There's tons more words that help people define themselves. So briefly, some of the terms in common use are transgender, which is the umbrella term for people who are transitioning in some way, that they identify in a gender that's not congruent with their bodies or their sex assigned at birth, gender assigned at birth. And then there's non-binary, which means someone who is somewhere on the spectrum or outside the spectrum of male or female. Binary refers to male or female. And we are in a binary culture. We think in binary terms a lot. And not just with gender, but we think in our so many ways. We think in very all or nothing, absolute, black or white terms. So we do that with gender, male or female. And there's a lot of people who say, no, I'm not all male, I'm not all female, I'm somewhere in between, or I'm somewhere outside the binary altogether, so non-binary. There's gender non-conforming, which refers to how we present ourselves. So someone who is conforming to the gender assigned at birth, which simply means, you know, when we're tested in utero or we pop out of the womb and a usually doctor assigns us a gender based on either how we look when we come out of the womb or the tests that are done when we're still in utero, we're assigned a gender, which may not be the gender with which we identify. So there are certain characteristics that match gender assigned at birth, physical characteristics, the secondary sex characteristics, the ways of presenting oneself in stereotypical masculine or feminine ways. And so someone who's gender non-conforming is someone who doesn't conform to that binary, or doesn't conform to the stereotypical presentation that we come to expect in people. So gender non-conforming, non-binary, transgender are just terms that are all-encompassing. Now, under those different umbrellas, many people are coming up with new terms every day to describe themselves, and they'll add something like pan, meaning all, to something. So pangender means all genders. I'm not limiting myself to any one gender. Even if it's non-binary, I'm saying I can be all genders. Some people use that with sexual as well. They say, I'm not attracted to just one sex, one gender. I'm attracted to all genders. Pansexual, which would be the opposite of asexual, meaning I'm not anything. And so there can be agender, meaning I'm not limiting myself to any one gender either. Some of the terms that are no longer fashionable or in use are anything with an ism. Isms like transgenderism, that tends to pathologize someone as if
Sure.
the word itself makes sense, and yet anything that seems to pathologize, we don't want to use. So transgender is generally used as an adjective, a transgender person. Okay, it's not a noun, so we don't want to say a transgender. We don't want to use it as a verb, like someone is transgendered. Okay, that's something we no longer use. You're going to see older writings that have some of these words, and we have to be able to catch them. Certainly, I ask everyone out there, and especially every trans person out there, please really pay attention to the intention. Please correct people gently and recognize that for a lot of people, there's no ill intention, and I think most people do recognize that. And sometimes there is. Sometimes there is. There's a lot of meanness and nastiness out there, and that's unfortunate. For the rest of us who are not anywhere on the gender spectrum, non-binary, non-conforming, trans, someone who identifies as the gender to which they were assigned at birth, we are called cis, C-I-S, so cisgender. I myself identify as cisgender. I was assigned female at birth, and my gender identity is female, so I'm considered cisgender. And beyond that, my advice is ask someone. If you don't know who they are, how they identify, just ask. Just ask, just like we ask about their pronouns. My pronouns are she and her and hers. And you're going to see that a lot with people when they're signing things, when they're identifying themselves, they let you know their pronouns. So if you're ever in doubt, just ask. Say, how do you identify? Thank you.